Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 15th of June, comes to you from London. And really big jump in the dollar here. Interestingly, this spike here was the Federal Reserve announcement, rising interest rates. We spiked and then we fell away a little bit. But this big move yesterday was the European Central Bank announcing its plan to end quantitative easing, and that had a massive effect on the euro, which in turn had a big effect on the dollar. So we're right back to testing this level that we saw at the end of May, and interestingly, the dollar is looking bullish again, and this is very much in line with the medium-term chart. Long-term still has work to do, but we're starting to see this bullishness just kicking in. And interestingly, we've got upside targets here of 97 on the dollar index, so that's 2.3%. The dollar looking like the strong currency going forward, and we see that plummet in the euro yesterday on that ECB announcement. A very big one-day move. Haven't seen a one-day move like that for a long time, and looking like now a bearish engulfing candle there on the end of that of chart. So really quite interesting now that the euro is weakening. And looking against the Japanese yen, we see here the dollar has been strengthening. A bit of a sell-off here, in fact, on the dollar yen chart, but still looking bullish in all three time frames and looking like making that long-term transition. Still has work to do, but we've got this massive upside target potentially if the dollar does start to make new highs. Looking at sterling, sterling falling quite heavily against that stronger dollar. It's more about dollar strength, but that's weak for sterling. And looking against the euro, we see that jump there yesterday in sterling against the euro. So that is good news for sterling against the euro. Euro starting to fall away. Looking at the Swiss franc, we see here sterling also rose slightly, so the Swiss franc went up in sympathy with the euro a little bit, and the Aussie dollar, strangely, sterling has just held its strength here as well. So it's mostly about US dollar strength. Looking at Bitcoin, still looking weak, trying to make a transition on that short-term chart. A lot of downside targets here: 6,170, 5,180, and 5,100. So those 5,000 levels. That's a further 22% downside. Really hard for people who might have bought Bitcoin at around that 20,000 peak, but it's still looking bearish. Big bearish triangle here, and moving into weakness there. Looking at the US stock market, of course, the thing that's dominating at the moment is the trade war brewing with China, and China saying it will retaliate. So we're seeing the S&P 500 index is still struggling to make new highs here. The NASDAQ is making new highs and was up quite sharply yesterday. A lot of this tech driven, of course. Looking at the Dow, we're seeing here the Dow is also still looking quite strong, but just struggled to make any headway yesterday. And looking at the Russell 2000, much the same picture. Broadly based stocks moving higher, but of course we've got to wait for today, and the S&P future down slightly. The Nasdaq E-mini also down slightly, so a bit hard to say which way the markets are going to end the week. Looking at the FTSE 100, we're down this morning. 250, we're also down about 0.5%. And looking at the DAX jumping on that weaker euro. That's helping German companies earn more in their foreign earnings, and we're seeing the same with the CAC Courant. So weaker euro is having an impact there. The Japanese market was up 1/3% overnight. Hang Seng index down 1/4%, looking quite bearish there. And of course, the Chinese market, which is the one that we've been most worried about, sinking to new lows, taking us into long-term bearish territory. So interestingly, this Chinese effect that we are seeing is coming out in the trade war talk. So China now looking quite worrying, and that was one of our top 10 things for the year, our concerns about the Chinese stock market. Looking at the Sensex, the Indian market looking stronger as well. The Australian market up, also looking quite strong there, up 1.3%. Crude oil, Brent crude sitting at 75.69, so we're just into bearish territory on the short-term chart, and WTI holding its bull trend. So that's closing the spread basically. Looking at US NatGas, further moves yesterday, and we're just hitting that $3 mark. 2.99%. It's a gradual rise here, but we are just seeing a move into a longer term trend. We've got targets to 329, 317, 312, 308. It does look like US NatGas is going to have a little bit of a resurgence. Looking at gold, we're back below the $1,300 level this morning. That stronger dollar not not really helping. So we are seeing here that gold is just struggling to hold on. And looking at for silver, we're seeing also it's holding on to its bull trend, but just flat this morning. US 10-year yields fell back on that rise in the dollar, and we're sitting at 2.92%. And we do have targets to 2.89, 2.78. So as much as we've seen the track in US interest rates, we're just struggling to hold on. Looking at the tech majors, we've got Apple up very slightly overnight. Amazon continues to push higher, so up 1.1%. Really, Amazon has been the star performer of late. Alphabet, Google looking pretty strong, up 1.5%. Facebook really pushing much higher there, up nearly 2% to 196. Can we break $200 soon on Facebook? And last of all, Microsoft holding on to the $101 level. That's it for today. Have a great weekend. Until Monday, happy charting. See you then.